Be me, 32, feminist activist and public speaker in Boston. Built career giving talks about toxic masculinity and male accountability. Regular speaker at universities, conferences, corporate diversity trainings. Known for direct confrontational style when calling out male behavior. Over 100K followers on social media consuming my content about men's issues. Confident in my message, men need constant correction and education. They need to be called out, held accountable, pushed to do better. My approach has always been aggressive because men respond to force. That's what I believed, what I taught, what I built platform on. Never questioned whether my methods actually worked or just felt good. First sign something was wrong came at university speaking engagement. Giving talk to mixed audience about dismantling patriarchy. Room packed with maybe 200 students, solid turnout. Started with my usual opening about male privilege and systemic oppression. Noticed something odd about 15 minutes in. Male students and audience had this blank expression. Not angry or defensive like I usually see. Just completely empty, staring through me rather than at me. Like I was background noise they'd learned to tune out. Continued with talk, getting more animated, more passionate. Usually this is where I see reactions, pushback, engagement. Instead the men just sat there, faces neutral, eyes glazed. Some scrolling phones openly, not even pretending to listen. Others staring at ceiling or out windows. None of them responding to my points at all. Raised my voice, used more emphatic language. You men in this room benefit from systems designed to oppress women. Your silence is complicity, your comfort is violence. Still nothing, like talking to walls. Women in audience nodding and engaged. Men completely checked out mentally. Q&A session after was revealing in worst way. All questions came from women in crowd. Not a single man raised his hand. Called on one directly, guy in third row. You haven't said anything. Do you have thoughts on male accountability? He looked at me with dead eyes. Not really, no. Just 3 words delivered with zero emotion. Tried to press him. Surely you have opinions about your own privilege? He shrugged. If you say so. Then went back to looking at his phone. Another male student I called on responded similarly. Don't you think men need to do better? Sure. He said flatly. No conviction, no engagement. Like agreeing just to make me stop talking. Left that event frustrated and confused. Usually get passionate arguments, defensive reactions, something. This was worse than resistance. This was complete indifference. Posted about experience on social media that night. Men are now using apathy as weapon against accountability. They pretend not to care to avoid doing the work. Comments flooded in from other feminist speakers. Same thing happening at my talks. Men just zone out now, don't even argue anymore. It's strategic, they're refusing to engage. Started noticing pattern across all my speaking events. Corporate diversity training the following week. Teaching male employees about microaggressions and unconscious bias. 20 men in room, all required to attend. Not one of them actually present mentally. They sat there, nodded when appropriate, said nothing. During group exercise about examining privilege, men went through motions mechanically. Gave rehearsed answers, clearly what they thought I wanted to hear. But zero genuine reflection or engagement. One guy's answer was literally, I have privilege and need to do better. Word for word what I'd said 5 minutes earlier. Just repeating it back like trained response. Pulled him aside after. Do you actually believe what you said? He looked at me tiredly. Does it matter? Of course it matters. This is about genuine growth. He almost laughed. Look, I'm here because HR requires it. I'm going to nod, agree with everything you say, then leave. That's what everyone does now. We learned arguing doesn't work, so we just don't engage. His honesty was more disturbing than any argument. Started investigating this phenomenon more deliberately. Talked to other diversity trainers and activists. Everyone reporting same experience with male audiences. Complete withdrawal, strategic compliance without belief. Men weren't fighting back anymore, just shutting down. One trainer described it perfectly. It's like they've built mental walls. You can see them put up shields the moment you start talking. They'll sit through entire presentation without absorbing a word. Another said, they've learned that disagreeing gets them punished. But agreeing and doing nothing is safer. So that's what they do now? Realized this was bigger problem than individual events. Men across entire culture were tuning out feminist criticism. Not out of malice, out of exhaustion. They'd been lectured so much they stopped listening entirely. Attended panel discussion about male allyship at conference. 5 feminist speakers, myself included, all women. Audience was maybe 60% male. We talked for 90 minutes about what men need to do, how they need to call out other men, how they need to examine their behavior constantly, how they need to center women's voices. Looked out at audience during my portion. Male faces completely blank, no emotional response whatsoever. Not nodding, not frowning, just existing in space. Like their consciousness had left their bodies. After panel approached several men who attended. What did you think of the discussion? First guy. It was good. Asked what specifically resonated. All of it, he said without elaborating. Could tell he hadn't retained a single point. Second guy. Very informative. Asked what he'd do differently now. Be better, he said vaguely. Pressed for specifics. Whatever you said in there, he gestured dismissively. He genuinely didn't remember anything from 90-minute panel. Third guy was more honest when I pushed. Look, I came because my girlfriend wanted me to. I sat there, I didn't argue or cause problems. That's all she asked for. That's what I gave. Did you learn anything? I asked. I learned to keep my mouth shut, he said flatly. Then walked away. His words haunted me. I learned to keep my mouth shut. That wasn't growth, that was shut down. Started analyzing my own content with this lens. Reviewed videos of my speeches and presentations. Watched male faces in audiences. The pattern was everywhere once I saw it. Men would start engaged, then gradually glaze over. Usually around minute 5 of criticism. By minute 10, completely tuned out. They'd stay physically present, but mentally gone. Read through comments on my social media posts. Male commenters who used to argue now just posted. You're absolutely right, with zero follow-up. Or thank you for educating us in robotic way. No genuine engagement, just compliance language. One comment thread particularly revealing. Posted about men needing to do more emotional labor. Male commenter wrote, "Yes, we must do better." Another man replied to him, "Bro, stop pretending you care." First guy responded, "I don't. But if you argue, they destroy you. So just agree and move on with your life." Several other men chimed in agreeing with this strategy. Tactical agreement is only defense. Never argue, never disagree, just nod and ignore. They can't attack you if you don't engage. These weren't bitter incels or misogynists. These were regular guys discussing survival strategy, treating my activism like threat to avoid. Decided to do informal research. Created an anonymous survey asking men about feminist criticism. Posted in various online spaces. Got over 500 responses in 3 days. Results were devastating to my worldview. Question: do you listen to feminist criticism of men? 78% answered, I tune it out automatically. 15% answered, I pretend to listen but don't absorb it. 7% answered, I try to listen but it's overwhelming. Question: has feminist criticism made you want to change? 82% answered, no, it makes me defensive and withdrawn. 12% answered, initially yes, but I got tired of never being enough. 6% answered, yes, I'm committed to growth. Question: when feminists criticize men, what do you do? Most common responses: nod and say nothing. Agree verbally but dismiss mentally. Leave the conversation as soon as possible. Pretend I'm listening while thinking about other things. Say whatever will make them stop talking. Question: why don't you engage with the criticism? Responses were brutally honest. Because nothing I say will be right. Disagreeing makes you a misogynist. Agreeing makes you complicit. Asking questions makes you alienating. There's no winning, so I just check out. I'm tired of being told I'm the problem. Every conversation becomes lecture I can't escape. They don't want discussion, they want confession. One response summarized it perfectly. I learned that feminist criticism isn't meant to help me grow. It's meant to make me feel bad. So I stopped listening to protect my mental health. Now I just nod, agree, and ignore everything they say. Life got way better when I stopped trying to meet their standards. This response had 67 upvotes from other men, indicating many felt exactly the same way. Started seeing this everywhere in my daily life. Coffee shop conversation I overheard between two guys. My girlfriend made me watch that documentary about toxic masculinity. Did you learn anything? His friend asked. Yeah, I learned to say you're right, babe, and think about football. They both laughed. Not mean-spirited laughter, just tired acceptance. At gym, overheard another conversation. HR made us do another diversity training. Same woman as last time, yelling about male privilege for 2 hours. What did you do? Same thing as last time, mentally worked on my project proposal. She thinks I was listening. I finished 3 weeks of work planning. Again, not angry, just pragmatic. These men had learned to simulate engagement while being completely absent. Brought this up at Feminist organizing meeting. Told other activists what I was discovering. Men aren't listening anymore, they're just pretending. Expected alarm, got defensiveness instead. One activist scoffed. Good, they should feel uncomfortable. If they're tuning out, we're not being aggressive enough. Another agreed. Men have always avoided accountability. This is just new form of male fragility. Tried to explain this was different. They're not avoiding, they're adapting. They found way to avoid consequences of disagreement by agreeing without internalizing anything. But group wasn't interested in hearing this. Let them tune out. We don't need their engagement. We're not here to make men comfortable. Left that meeting feeling isolated. Realized my colleagues didn't understand the problem. If men completely tune out feminist criticism, the criticism becomes meaningless noise. Decided to try different approach in next speaking engagement. University talk scheduled for following week. Changed entire format. Instead of lecturing about what men do wrong, structured it as actual dialogue. Started with, I want to understand male perspectives. Room went silent. Men looked suspicious. Like it was trap they'd seen before. One brave guy raised hand. Are you actually asking, or is this performative? His question revealed how little trust remained. I'm actually asking, I said. He studied me skeptically. Fine, you want male perspective? We're exhausted. We're tired of being told everything we do is wrong. Tired of being the villain in every story. Tired of lectures disguised as dialogue. So we stopped participating. Other men nodded in agreement. Another spoke up, emboldened. You want to know why we tune out? Because it doesn't matter what we say. If we disagree, we're misogynists. If we agree, we're patronizing. If we're quiet, we're complicit. The game is rigged, so we lose no matter what. So we stopped playing. Woman in audience objected. But men need to be held accountable. Guy responded, accountable for what exactly? For being male? For existing? Most of us are just trying to live our lives. We're not oppressing anyone. We're just tired of being blamed for everything. Room erupted in agreement from male students. First time I'd seen genuine engagement in months. But it wasn't the engagement I wanted. It was frustration finally being expressed. I sit through these talks because they're mandatory. One student said, but I stopped listening sophomore year. Now I just browse Reddit on my phone. Half the guys here are doing the same thing. Looked around. Several men held up phones, showing sports scores, memes, anything but my presentation. They weren't even hiding it anymore. Another student, quieter. I wanted to be good ally. I read the books, went to the workshops, examined my privilege. But it was never enough. Always more privilege to examine, more work to do. Eventually I realized I'd never be good enough. So I stopped trying. His voice had real pain in it. Not anger, just defeat. That's exactly the problem, woman argued. Men give up when it gets hard. But guy shook his head. No, I gave up when I realized it was impossible. You're not asking us to be better. You're asking us to be something we're not. And when we can't, you call us toxic. The room went quiet. His words hung there uncomfortably. Another man added softly, I don't think you understand what it's like to constantly hear how terrible you are, how your existence is problematic, how everything you enjoy is toxic, how you need to completely reconstruct yourself. It's not educational, it's demoralizing. Female student interrupted angrily. Oh, poor men, being criticized. But the guy continued calmly. It's not about being criticized. It's about being dehumanized. When every aspect of your identity is pathologized, eventually you just shut down. That's what happened to most of us. Looked around room at male faces. They were nodding, no longer blank. Finally showing emotion. But emotion was exhaustion and resignation. One more student spoke up. You asked why we tune out? Because tuning out is self-preservation. Listening means accepting that we're fundamentally flawed. That our thoughts, feelings, interests are all problematic. That's not healthy, so we disconnect. His words hit differently than any argument. Not defensive, just explaining survival mechanism. But how do we create change if you won't listen? He smiled sadly. Maybe consider that constant criticism doesn't create change. It creates resistance. And when resistance doesn't work, it creates apathy. That's where most of us are now, apathetic. The talk dissolved into actual discussion after that. First real exchange I'd had with male audience in months. But it wasn't the validation I wanted. It was men explaining why they'd stopped listening. After event, several male students approached. One said, "Thank you for actually letting us speak. Most talks just lecture at us. We've learned to just endure and forget." Another added, "It's nice to be heard. Usually we just get told what we think, and how those thoughts are wrong." This felt different. Third student handed me printed page. "This is an essay I wrote for class about male disengagement. Professor gave me C and said I was making excuses for patriarchy. But I think you might actually get it." Took the essay home, read it that night. It was thoughtful analysis of how men respond to criticism. Described 3 stages. Stage 1, defensive engagement, trying to argue. Stage 2, performative agreement, trying to appease. Stage 3, complete withdrawal, tuning out entirely. He argued most men are now in stage 3. Because stages 1 and 2 both resulted in punishment. Only stage 3 provided peace. His conclusion, feminist criticism of men has become so pervasive and harsh that men have collectively decided to ignore it. This isn't victory for feminism, it's communication breakdown. When your message drives your audience away, the problem isn't the audience. Professor had written in red, "This centers male comfort over women's safety." But reading it, I realized he was right. We'd pushed so hard that men just stopped listening. Spent next weeks observing this dynamic everywhere. Men in relationships going, "Yes, dear," while clearly not listening. Men in workplace trainings mentally absent. Men online giving perfunctory agreements then moving on. They'd all learned same lesson. Engagement is painful. Disengagement is peaceful. Started reading men's forums and spaces I'd previously dismissed. Found thousands of men discussing this exact phenomenon. Just agree with everything they say. Never express actual opinion. Nod. Smile. Think about literally anything else. They can't hurt you if you don't engage. This was widespread strategy. Men teaching each other how to tune out feminist criticism. Not because they were bad people, but because they learned it was only way to maintain sanity. One thread particularly detailed. Here's how to survive feminist lecture. Step 1. Make eye contact periodically. Step 2. Nod every 30 seconds. Step 3. Say that's a good point once or twice. Step 4. Think about literally anything else. Step 5. Leave as soon as socially acceptable. Thread had hundreds of responses. Men sharing their own techniques. I mentally plan my week. I compose emails in my head. I count ceiling tiles. I replay sports highlights. All while appearing to listen attentively. These weren't monsters or misogynists. Just exhausted men who'd learned to protect themselves by becoming mentally absent. Brought all this research to my next feminist meeting. Presented findings about male disengagement. How our approach was causing complete withdrawal. How men had learned to simulate agreement without changing. Expected thoughtful discussion. Got immediate hostility instead. So you're blaming women for men's refusal to grow? You're saying we should be nicer to men? This is classic patriarchal reframing. Tried to explain that wasn't my point. I'm saying our message isn't landing. Men have learned to tune us out completely. We're talking into void. But they weren't interested. Let them tune out. We don't need male approval. We're not going to coddle male fragility. Left meeting realizing I was alone in this concern. My feminist colleagues saw male withdrawal as weakness. I was starting to see it as our failure. If goal is changing male behavior. But men have stopped listening entirely. Or we failed to communicate effectively. Posted about this online. We need to discuss male disengagement from feminist criticism. Our methods are causing men to mentally check out. This isn't success, it's communication breakdown. Response was immediate and harsh. Called traitor to feminism. Accused of centering male feelings. Told I was perpetuating patriarchy. Lost hundreds of followers. Speaking invitations canceled. Feminist organizations distanced from me. All because I suggested our approach wasn't working. But I couldn't unsee what I'd learned. Men weren't listening anymore. They'd adapted to constant criticism. by developing immunity to it. Created mental shields that blocked everything. Final straw came at last speaking event. Before announcing, I was stepping back. Small college, maybe 50 students. Gave shortened version of my usual talk. Watched male faces glaze over within minutes. By end of talk, not one man looked engaged. During Q&A, called on male student directly. What do you think about male privilege? He looked at me with those dead eyes I'd seen so often. Recited robotically. Male privilege exists and I benefit from it. Asked, do you actually believe that? He shrugged, does it matter? Yes, it matters. This is about genuine understanding. He leaned back in chair. Look, I'll say whatever you want me to say. I've learned that's easiest path. I don't argue, I don't engage, I don't think about it. I just agree and move on. That's what you created. His honesty silenced the room. What do you mean that's what we created? He gestured around. You wanted men to listen, so we pretended to listen. You wanted men to agree, so we learned to agree. You wanted men to change, so we became better at hiding. Congratulations, you won. We're not fighting back anymore. We're just gone. He stood up and left. Several other men followed him. Not angrily, just done with the conversation. Sat there watching them leave. Realized he was absolutely right. We'd destroyed our own message. By making it impossible for men to authentically engage. They'd learned to perform agreement, while tuning out completely. That was my last speaking event. Stepped back from activism to process everything. Realized that my aggressive approach, my constant criticism and call-outs, had actually achieved opposite of intended goal. Instead of helping men grow, I taught them to shut down. Instead of creating dialogue, I'd created defensive withdrawal. Instead of fostering change, I'd fostered apathy. And the worst part, my feminist colleagues couldn't see it. They celebrated male silence as victory, not realizing that silent men aren't changed men. They're just men who stopped listening. The criticism still happens. The lectures still occur. The call-outs still come. But men have learned to let it all wash over them. Like white noise, they don't register. They nod. They agree. They move on. Without internalizing a single word. That's what I created. That's what we all created. By making criticism so constant and harsh, that men's only defense was complete disengagement. We destroyed our own message by refusing to deliver it in a way people could hear. And now we're left talking into void, while men tune out everything we say, not because they're bad, but because we made listening unbearable.